Here's your host, Alex Garrett.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex Garrett, and yes, this is the Alex Garrett Podcast Network, but I'm proud to welcome Mr. Mario Gallucci and Mario Gallucci's Mr. Acquittal, defending the rights of the people. See, this podcast is on the Garrett Network, and we have been privileged to have tens of thousands of people listening to podcasts on our platform, but now I'm very happy to introduce one of the top criminal attorneys in the country, Mario Gallucci. And Mario, welcome back once again to your own show on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.
How are you, Alex? What's going on? Anything good out there in the world?
I know that we're big Yankee fans, and we're seeing that crumble a little bit with the MRIs to Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge. But we'll get to sports in a minute. I want to talk about the LI body parts case in Suffolk County because you have your own take on it, being that you were part of a body parts case as well.
I was part of probably the largest body parts case to ever hit this nation. I was part of the body parts case in which a doctor from Long Island was actually taking body parts at a funeral parlors. And when I say body parts, we're talking about tendons and ligaments and skin and different parts of the body that are actually used for medical purposes. And he was taking these harvesting. It's not taking, they call it harvesting. He was harvesting these body parts and sending them to processors, RTI, which is one of the larger processors. And what these companies do, they process ligaments, tendons, and skin to be used in surgical procedures. And my client, he was in the tissue harvesting industry. And he had decided that a large group of people did not die in hospitals. That's where you typically would see tissue harvested. You see it on TV all the time that an accident victim goes to the hospital and they ask the family if they want to donate his organs. Well, one of the questions they also ask is whether you want to donate skin, tendon, ligament, bone. Bone could be used for different procedures. Well, he recognized that most people die in their home. And that's a whole population of people that we could harvest tissue from and be able to do some good for medical purposes. So he went to the FDA and he got approval. They agreed with him and they set up these guidelines. And the guidelines were that you had to get the individual's family consent, saying just like when you're in a hospital, you have to sign a consent to take your body parts or organs. They had to sign a consent in the funeral parlor, and then he had to send a sample of blood to be analyzed, because when you're in a hospital, they could test the blood right there and see if you got disease. And he would have to take a sample of the blood and send it out. And once it became apparent that there was no disease, he was able to ship the tissue that he had harvested to these different tissue harvesting companies, and they would put it out into the public. The only problem was that he had decided early on in the case that he really didn't need permission, that he would just sign the forms for consent on his own, that nobody would know he was harvesting the tissue. He also figured out that it didn't matter if the tissue was diseased or not, because all the tissue gets irradiated. Irradiation is a process in which they kill all disease. And his understanding of the science was that once the tissue was irradiated, that there would be no disease. And he was right, by the way, and I'll explain to you why he was right. But as far as getting permission, he didn't do that, and he turned the tissue harvesting business into a multi-million-dollar business until he got caught. The body parts in Long Island, that's a much different scenario. The body parts in Long Island is actually, I can't wait to see what's going to happen here, because obviously somebody died. They are not charged with the murder of that individual. So we have no idea how they came in possession of the bodies, number one. Number two, we have no idea how that body expired. What was the cause of death? Number three, we don't know the manner of death. The manner of death would be, was it homicide? Was it suicide? Was it an accident? All we know is that they took possession of dead bodies. They desecrated them, which is a crime, and they got rid of them in the um, and they got rid of them in separate parks, which is unheard of. I mean, I just don't understand their thought process. If you're actually doing what you're doing, why would you get rid of them in an area where people traverse? It just makes no sense. So this
Now,
is
wait, should they reach out to you for some advice, defense on this?
oh,
Because you
without a
have
doubt.
experience with body parts.
Without a doubt, they should reach out to me. Without a doubt. I don't know who's representing them. I thought I saw Legal Aid was representing them. Um, so I don't know.
Well, in our last conversation about body parts, didn't you say you had to bring a leg into the courtroom? Is that did I hear that right?
I brought a leg into a courtroom, but it wasn't part of the body parts. It was part of a demonstration that we used for I think it was a hammertoe surgery that I was involved with when I did medical malpractice defense. And I was showing how your toes are like your fingers, and they have ligaments and tendons that make you bend your fingers. So I was using a human leg to demonstrate how that worked.
It's interesting. You are Mr. Acquittal, so tell us about your craft, a little more about the craft that maybe first-time listeners don't know. How do you get acquittals for your
So,
clients?
it takes a lot of work. You got to understand the dynamic of your case, and you got to understand the dynamic of the community you're in. So, for example, Alex, we're in New York City. New York City is composed of 5 boroughs. So, the jury pool that you get in, say, the Bronx is different than the jury pool that you would get in Staten Island. So, in the Bronx, you could get even a plea bargain that's different. For example, I had a double attempted murder in the first degree in the Bronx. In Staten Island, a case like that, your offer would be probably close to 35 or 40 years in jail. In the Bronx, the offer on that case was 9 years on a possession of a weapon. It's so you have to know who your community is that you're trying the case in front of. That's number one. Number two, you need to have all the facts. You need to know every side. You need to know what the police are going to say. You need to know what the victim's going to say. You need to test every bit of evidence. When I say every bit of evidence, as you remember, Alex, in the last episode, we discussed a search warrant and how a search warrant works. Well, that would be something that we would do in every case involving a search warrant. But let's take a case that doesn't involve a search warrant. Let's take a case where somebody's accused of possession of a weapon, where somebody is driving down the street, gets pulled over for a traffic infraction. So that's easy, right? You're driving, you were speeding, police pull you over. Now, when the police pull you over, they have the right to ask you for your license, your registration, your insurance card. They have the right to look into what they can see in the car, if they see any, because it's for their own safety. And that's about it. Now, we see a lot of cases where we call it a pretext stop, where the police will pull you over for a ticket that nobody could see. Nobody sees a crime. But they could say something like, well, you wandered over the double yellow line. Now, who could test that? Most of these cars don't have MVRs, which are the motor vehicle recorders. So you don't see that. Everybody's got a body worn camera. You do see that. But they'll walk over to a car and they'll start questioning them. Then they'll ask them to get out of the car because they think they see something. And then they'll search you for their own safety and they'll find a gun. So it's my job to test that system. Did they have a reason to stop you? Did they have a reason to ask you to get out of the car? Did they have a reason to question you other than the questions they needed for the materials they need, your name, your address, all of that information. So that's how you do it. You start at the very bottom. When When Giuliani, who I loved, started as mayor, he started what we call broken windows. Start at the bottom. If you start arresting people for jumping over a turnstile, they'll stop jumping over a turnstile. Alvin Bragg, the current district attorney in Manhattan, disagrees with that system. As we all know, that's why we have absolute bedlam and incivility in our subway system, so much so we have to bring the army in to patrol the New York City subway system. But broken windows also applies to criminal defense. If you start at the bottom, you start at the very beginning of a case and you test every single piece of evidence from the moment a person was arrested until the moment they were prosecuted. Make sure that the prosecution does everything they're supposed to do. You hold their feet right to the fire. That's what I do. That's what I do. I test every single step, and I've been doing it for 34 years on both sides. So I have experience that very few other lawyers have. I've seen just about every scenario you could think of. I mean, look, I had a body parts case. How many lawyers in this country could say they represented somebody that was illegally harvesting tissue from a funeral parlor? How many people could say that they've probably done over 100 murder trials to verdict? There aren't many lawyers that I know of that could say that. And on a regular day today, for example, I had on my calendar, let's see, today is March 12th. So I started the day in New Jersey with a DWI in municipal court in Monmouth County. I then went to Staten Island. I represented a young man on a misdemeanor for driving with his license suspended. From there, I went to a guy that assaulted a guy in a gas station with a knife. From there, I went to a murder where my client has a great self-defense issue. From there, I went to a possession of a gun in exactly what I just told you, Alex, a car stop where they found a gun in the guy's back seat. And not only did they find a gun, this is a great story. My client's wife owns that gun. My client's wife licensed to have that gun. My client's wife bought that gun. My client's wife used that gun. My client's wife pulled her car in her garage in New Jersey, and unbeknownst to her, her husband the next morning drove her car to Staten Island and he double parked it in front of a fire hydrant, which got the police to the scene. When the police came to the scene, my client had a warrant for failing to pay one of those camera tickets you get all over New York, mostly on Staten Island, because you don't see any cameras in the Bronx. You see them all over Staten Island. He failed to pay a $50 ticket, and there was a warrant issued by the Department of Motor Vehicles for his failure to do that. And what happened after that? They took him into the precinct. They searched the car, what's called an inventory search, because, of course, the police have to ensure that you're not going to say they stole anything. An inventory search revealed the gun in the back of the car. They arrested my client for the gun, and now they're offering him the minimum. They're offering him minimum 2 years. Now, is that the guy that we're worried about? Is that the guy that should go to jail? Or is that the guy that we should say, I'm sorry, we didn't realize it was your wife's gun. We didn't realize it was legally purchased. We didn't realize you didn't know it was in the backseat of the car. He's not a gangbanger. He's never been in trouble in his life. He owns 4 businesses, but that's the guy that they're choosing to prosecute.
My goodness, I love this is why I do the show with you. I love your passion, your energy for this. And you're right. It does feel like the little guy's getting stepped on more than the violent criminal. Can I just say that here on the Mr. Acquittal?
Oh,
I think that's true.
Look at the woman that smashed the celloist in the head with a bottle and was let right out of jail with a prior record and warrants. But that was Manhattan. You can do anything you want in Manhattan. They embolden them to do what they want.
On a weekend podcast, I was talking about this. I said there's a 3-pronged assault against New York. Maybe you agree with me, Mario. First prong is the fact that a DA in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, is lessening felonies to misdemeanors almost all the time. So that's easing bail reform to let people back on the streets, as you just referenced. Then you got the border crisis. and just judges that are not willing to actually apply the law. I mean, this is a pronged assault on New York. How do we fix that?
Well, it's going to be very difficult. You got Hochul, who's meaningless, so she could remove Alvin Bragg. She won't. So you need somebody to run against him. But you know what? Somebody runs against him, and it's so New York has become so left, and it's so. And I'm not a political person. I want the best man for the job, whether they're Democrat or Republican. If I think you're the best person for that job, then you deserve to have that job. Not,
Yes.
These guys have their own agenda. Look at what they did on bail reform. Bail
Sure,
reform, and I'm a criminal defense attorney, used to be that I would have to sit and argue just about on every case that there not be any bail for my client. Now, I don't have to do that at all. I just sit there and the DA lets everybody go. Everybody go. The bail reform system originally gave the judges no discretion. Now they have discretion. Now they have some discretion to look at somebody's prior warrant history, the crime itself, and make a determination after looking at all the factors on whether this person is not only going to return to court, but a danger to the community. So for the most part, you have judges that will follow that, except in Manhattan. So if you get arrested in Manhattan for smashing somebody in the head with a bottle, that judge will release you. The Bragg, believe it or not, actually had his office ask for bail in that case, which was surprising because in Manhattan, you could just walk out the door, unless, of course, you're Donald Trump, then no. Or you're a businessman, then no. But if you got a gun, or you hit somebody else, or you beat somebody on a subway, that guy is who gets out. If you're an honest businessman who makes a mistake in his taxes, you're going to get prosecuted. You're going to be on the front page of the paper, and they're asking you to go to jail. But, I digress for a second here. So you have judges. The problem with Manhattan is you got a DA who does nothing. You got some judges who do nothing. The prosecutors in his own office discuss with us all the time how their hands are tied because he's got all these rules. Oh, we're not allowed to ask for bail. Oh, we're not allowed to do this. Oh, we're not allowed to do that. But if you are a right-wing person or a Republican, you're going to get prosecuted. Look at Letitia James. Look at what she has done to the New York business structure. So Donald Trump is accused of inflating his income in order to get loans to do construction. So, number one, if he inflated the value of his investments, it would be incumbent upon the people giving him the money to make a decision on whether he has the collateral or not. When you apply for a mortgage on your home and you say, I make $200,000 a year, you have to verify that. When you say, I have no credit card debt, they verify that. When you say, I have, this asset and this asset, and I'll be able to afford my $1,500 a month mortgage, they do that. Well, every single loan that Donald Trump took out, these lenders looked into all of that information. They looked at what he said. Well, I own this building, and this building is worth $1 billion. Do you think that the people lending him the money said, oh, okay, Mr. Trump, it's $1 billion? Or do you think they looked and said, oh, you know what? It's probably worth $1 billion, and they based it upon something. Letitia James is taking that and saying that he defrauded these. By the way, every one of those loans was paid back with interest. Nobody, not one, even the people that loaned him the money testified in his favor. This is a woman in charge of law enforcement that is now politicizing, using her job as a weapon to destroy her opposition. What does that sound like, Alex? That sounds like Russia. That sounds like a communist country. That's what happens in China. If you're a dissident, you go to jail. So in Letitia James's world, if she don't like you or you stand for something that's against what she believes in, you're going to get prosecuted by her. Donald Trump, I said it in my last podcast, and you don't have to be a Trump fan. You have to be a fan of the United States of America. And if you do not see what they are doing to this country by politicizing the Department of Justice, they're using politics as a weapon to bury those people that oppose them. It's a very, very, very scary slope that we are going down. And it's one that our future is at stake in this election. Our future is at stake.
It's gone to the point where, we can't even have an election without possibly removing Trump. I mean, this is how insane it's getting where these states want to remove him off the ballot. That's such a legal mess that these states are finding themselves in.
The state of Maine Maine decided, well, we don't want him on the ballot. One person made that decision. I don't want him on the ballot because he's an insurrectionist. He's never been accused of insurrection. He was never charged with insurrection. I represented two guys charged in that case. His name's not mentioned anywhere in any of the discovery, except for the fact that he gave a speech.
All right, well, let's get a lighter note here for Mario, because you're also a big sports fan, and I know you want to talk about this. That Brian Cashman did that overnight with you, and it was great with the Covenant House, and now he's dealing with some real issues on the Yankees. But as a sports fan, are you heartbroken today as a Yankee and Giant fan, or where do you say that? What's firing up with the sports?
I tell you what, I'm not a Giant fan, but I'm a Saquon Barkley fan. And the abuse that man has taken is uncalled for. And I could tie these two things together. Brian Cashman and I have slept out for Covenant House for at least 10 years together. Covenant House is an organization, as you know, I strongly believe in. They are a charity that raises awareness and money and housing and education for homeless teenagers throughout the world. And every year we have a sleep out and we sleep homeless. And Brian Cashman did it with me for a number of years, and we raised money and awareness for Covenant House. So last year, the Yankees being the Yankees in the predicament they were, Mr. Cashman had to probably work to put the team together. And I'm telling you right now, I woke up with a stomach ache when I saw Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole may now be out for the beginning of the season. It's like a Yankee nightmare every year with these injuries. So, and then to tie it all together this year, you know who I slept out with?
I believe he did it with you slept out with Saquon. Is that correct?
Saquon Barkley. So this year, the Giants were nice enough to invite us to the Meadowlands to sleep on the field homeless. And they donated a lot of money to Covenant House, and that's why we did it. I did not notice, but after every single game, home or away, Saquon Barkley meets with homeless teenagers and he takes them to dinner and hangs out with them, discusses with them what they're doing, how can he help them, and he's a big, big, big supporter of that cause. That's something that he doesn't advertise, and I'm sorry I'm talking about this, Saquon, but you are a gentleman. And now you get these people, the Giants basically told them to F off without saying F off. And look, I'm not a general manager. I have no idea why you made that decision. You made that decision. Now he gets an offer that can not only help him as a person, but his family financially, could set him up for the rest of his life. It happens to come from the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, what happened when we got Johnny Damon, when we got Euclid, when we got, who's the stinky outfielder we got that played for us for about an hour?
Jacoby Ellsbury, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Jacoby Ellsbury. He played, 15 minutes and got paid, $30 million? So I don't understand why you get these people that are like down on Saquon. They threw him away. And he said, all right, I'll leave. The guy's nothing but a gentleman, and I feel really bad for the abuse he's taken. really bad. And you know what? This Tiki Barber thing, I love Tiki. He's a nice guy. Listen to him in the afternoon. Listen to Boomer in the morning. Listen to Tiki in the afternoon. I'm upset that Saquon went back at him. I really believe that Tiki was just being funny. I don't think that Tiki was being kind-hearted or mean-spirited because Tiki was the consummate professional when he played ball. I love his show, and I think that he was just rousing Saquon. I was actually surprised that Saquon took it so personally.
Yeah, well, no, I was going to say you are a lawyer first and a sports fan second, and also you go to the gym a lot. I noticed you were awarded by Peloton. So when you combine sports and your workout, how does that help you become a better lawyer? Let me ask you that.
So, I almost died from COVID. And people say that. When people say hello to me, they say, "How are you?" I always say, "I'm fantastic. I never had a bad day in my life." And people will say, "What are you talking about? You almost died from COVID. You were in the hospital for a month, in ICU for 11 days. They brought in a priest to read you last rites. Your wife was told you're going to die and that she should start making arrangements." That was the best day of my life. You know why that was the best day of my life, Alex? Because I realized that I got comfortable. I realized that I was getting fat and out of shape and not taking care of myself. And as a result of that, that's why I got COVID so bad. As a result of being out of shape and not taking care of myself, I suffered. So that day is the day that I decided that I could do something about this. I can lose weight. It's an easy equation, Alex. It really is. People make such a big deal out of this. Eat less and exercise more. You don't need Wegovy. You just need to stop eating all the food and the wrong food and exercise. And that's what I did. And I'm down 100 pounds now. Wake up every morning at 4:30. I get a workout in before I go to work. I feel good every morning. So getting COVID was the best day of my life. It was an eye opener that made it better. Do you know, as a result of getting COVID, I no longer have to take blood pressure medication. I no longer have to take cholesterol medication. All as a result of just losing weight and being healthy.
All right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned COVID because I want to go a little extra time with you here, Mario, in episode 4 about the court system, the changes that we saw during COVID, where a lot of trials were taking place on Zoom. I mean, is there now a hybrid, or are you in the courtroom now more so than you were, in 2021, 22, say?
So criminal law never went, you could never do a trial criminal by virtual. So I tried the first criminal case in Richmond County after COVID. I tried in May of 2021. And at that point, my client had been in jail for almost 3 years because of the COVID delay. And we took precautions and we did all what we can do with respect to juries. So I have seen that as a result of jury selection being streamlined because of COVID, it is something that we use now that is actually beneficial. Something that to do jury selection during COVID gave us the opportunity to experiment and see things that are now in place now when we do jury selection. In addition to that, we now know that some things can be done virtually. There's no reason to bring somebody all the way into court. So a lot of people complain about bail, they're in jail. How about the average Joe Schmo that gets some BS criminal thing for whatever, DWI say, and he works, and he has to take a day off to go to court and do whatever he has to do. Now we find that these lesser crimes can be easily done virtually. What does that mean? That means that guy that would have to take a day off to go to court can now sit in his office and do a virtual court appearance along with his lawyer, which allows everybody to work more efficiently and makes the system a lot more streamlined, which allows us now to concentrate on the more serious cases and get them through the criminal justice system at a much, much quicker rate.
Do you think following protocol? Oh, sorry. Do you think following protocol? Oh,
go ahead.
Do you think following protocols, as strictly as you had to during the COVID years not needing to anymore has made your life easier? Because not only are you defending a trial, you had to go through all these protocols just to get in the courtroom, right?
Oh, it was crazy. You had to wear a mask. You had to do your hands. You had to stay 6 feet behind somebody. You couldn't go in a courtroom if there's more than 10 people. It was crazy. And now they're finding out that none of that was even necessary.
But I stepped over you there. So tell us what you were going to tell us before that
That
question.
civil, I don't do a lot of civil work, but the civil courts are now still almost all virtual because they found out that it's much more efficient to do it that way. So you have an insurance company that's defending a case and they're going to spend, thousands of dollars to send a lawyer to court to sit around for 6 hours waiting for his case to get called, where he could just sign in for a pre-scheduled time in a virtual conference, and it saves everybody money and it's much more efficient. So civil court is actually still mostly virtual as compared to criminal court.
Well, this has been a great reconnect to start 2024. I feel like we can go on forever, but we got to let the audience want more, right? So
Yes.
if you want more, where can they reach you, Mario, to tell them what they think of the show and whatnot?
Well, they could reach me at the law firm, at the Gallucci Law Firm. Contact us and be happy to talk to them about the show. They can follow me on Twitter. They can follow the Gallucci Law Firm on Facebook. They can follow the Gallucci Law Firm on Instagram. We're all over on every social platform except for that Taki Talk, whatever they call that.
Well, we got to get into it this spring because I feel like when the weather changes, crime tends to go up, and I feel like that makes your business a little better because you get to defend more as
Yes.
the weather heats up. Is that right?
Yeah, especially DWIs. A lot of people like to go to barbecues and have a little too much to drink. Remember, Uber.
Well, on that note, stay tuned with us for the spring edition of Mr. Acquittal with Mario Gallucci. But Mario, this has been a great start to our 2024 campaign.
Thank you. It is a pleasure, Alex, as always. Thank you.
Mario Gallucci, you are a criminal defense attorney with over 33 years of experience, recognized as one of the top lawyers in New York and New Jersey. And once again, they can reach you by calling 888-369-0674. No obligation, right?
Free no obligation.
Free consultation. At 888-369-0674. And email you at mario@thegallucci.com.
Thanks, Alex. As always, it was a pleasure sitting down with you and doing this again.
This has been Mario Gallucci's Mr. Acquittal, defending the rights of the people on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.